I'm excited to be here. I haven't been to a USAR meeting since I think 2014 or 16 when it was in Stanford University. And that was kind of like my first introduction to really the whole R community. I've been involved in R for probably, I don't know, since 2005, I think. We used to edit our files with Notepad++ and Emacs Speak Statistics, which I'm sure most of you are very familiar with. And then when RStudio came out, it just changed everything. It changed the way we did things. What I want to do is I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to the company that I work for. That made a lot of my work makes a lot of my work possible. I work for Smithfield Foods, and we are a local leader in, or I shouldn't say local. We're actually a national and a leader in pork production. The U.S. and Mexico is where we are concentrated right now. We used to be in Europe as well, but that was sold off a while ago. We're a pretty large company, Fortune 500, $4 billion revenue stream. It says 500 company-owned farms. We're more like 350 or so, but we have about 250,000 sows throughout the U.S. and Mexico. So we're pretty large. What I do in my division is, my division's called Smithfield Premium Genetics, and we're just a small, tiny slice of the overall company, about 150 employees, and most of those employees are technicians that work on the farms, that work in labs and whatnot. And there's seven of us who are PhD geneticists that are actually really the data scientists of the company, or of our division. And we're involved in data analysis and reporting and decision making, and it's all for the sake of genetic selection of our swine. When I say genetic selection, most people have strange things in their mind like gene editing and mutations, but we don't do any of that. What we do is maths, right? And you'll notice that I put the S at the end of math. The British do it. I suppose that the Irish do it as well. I got used to doing it because we don't study mathematics, we study mathematics. So that's why I did the S. And when I say we do maths, I want to just sort of detour just for a second and come back to that. On July 29th of this year, an article in the Wall Street Journal came out that interviewed our company and interviewed my boss and produced this article, finding faster and cheaper ways to get bacon. And at the end of the article, Kent said the same thing. He says, we do maths. And what I mean by we do maths is we take this equation, and this is Henderson's mixed effect model equation. It's pretty routine. We embellish it quite a bit for different purposes, but this is basically what we do, is solve for the betas and the A's. And if you want to learn a little bit more about how we do that, I'll be glad to talk to you afterwards. But I'm going to just zip on by that for right now. And not only are we into that equation and solving that equation, and actually we're using Fortran programs to solve those equations, because I mean it's millions of equations in that matrix, and so we really need something with the power. So we use Fortran, but we still have a lot of use for R, and it's really in monitoring our processes, looking at genetic trends, gathering data, summarizing it, and that kind of thing. And when when I came to the company in 2007, they were using SAS and SQL Server, and they were creating reports with Word. And you can imagine it's not very efficient, especially back then in 2007. There were really no good data flow or workflows to integrate everything. And so it took a long time. When I came on the scene, I brought R with me, and I convinced everybody that R was better. They liked it. They glommed onto it. But then when Shiny Server came out, we thought, hey, here's a great way to present some dynamic, some interactive reports and apps. And our Studio server came out as well. And those were open source that we put on our servers. They were easy to install. I could do it myself. I could put it all on one server. and it all worked really well for a little while. And we were able to produce some really nice apps like this. And this is an app that one of my colleagues, Dr. Angela Patera, who's here at the conference somewhere, she created this, and it can get very complicated in the network diagram that it shows depending upon how you choose. All right, and you can click and drag the boxes around, the nodes around and whatnot. We have typical Shiny apps like this that just sort of monitor our processes, see how much data we have in the database and that kind of thing. And then sort of, I should tell you a little story about this function that was created in our group. One of our team members created a function called getSQL, and it was based on the RODBC package to grab data from our SQL server. It was a nice little function, and he used it. He used it a lot, and then he started copying it to other scripts. And then we started noticing that he was giving it to other, which is fine. He gave it to other people, and they were copying it in their scripts. And soon we had about 100 copies of getSQL throughout our code. And in some cases that might be okay, but passwords were hard-coded in the function. So you can imagine what kind of a problem that was. So I created this package called SQL Connector, an internal package, and because we were all familiar with our studio server, and we were all familiar with R and everything, everyone was able to use it. It was a little bit of a pain, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But we created a package to get around that. And open source was good, and until it wasn't. Publishing the Shiny apps took up a bit of time. I had to copy them to a certain folder, a certain directory. I had to change permissions to make sure that the Shiny server could read them. Reports had to be scheduled by someone who knew crontab, which was basically me. So now I'm doing two things, installing apps and scheduling crontab items. There was no authentication, so we had to restrict it to within the corporate network. Apps that worked well locally would break when we published them. I'm sure a lot of people have had that issue. And then in-house packages had to be manually distributed. And that sort of relates back to the package I made. Even though it helped the problem, we now had to manually distribute it to everyone. We didn't have a good way to get it out. So we went from that. We realized we had limitations, and we decided about 3 years ago we have to get here. And I think when we started investigating, this was still called Our Studio, or the company was called Our Studio. I think their product was called Connect. And so what Posit Team is, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically an integrated server-based multi-user platform for analyzing and sharing and reporting data. And it comes with these three components: Connect to publish, Package Manager to manage packages, and Workbench to collaborate on code. And Workbench is more than just our studio. It has Jupyter in it, it's got Visual Studio Code, and it can also have Positron. So we had a lot of hurdles and we had a lot of headaches trying to get this done. And the big reason we had these hurdles is because I'm kind of naive. I had to spearhead this project, and I'm pretty naive about the ways of corporate bureaucracies. I'm a data scientist. I'm a geneticist. I don't know a whole lot about that. And I got to thinking, well, maybe there are a lot of other data scientists and geneticists or just scientists who could probably benefit from some of the things that, some of the hurdles that I had to jump. And lesson one that I took away was, it's a good thing we started with open source. And the reason is it's a familiarity thing. Despite its limitations, our entire group became familiar with the Posit products, the RStudio, the Shiny, and that kind of thing. And it was a really good proof of concept. And as you'll see in the next couple of slides, we had to deal with IT, we had to deal with other people who I didn't know we had to deal with at the time. Because like I said, I installed the open source stuff myself. When it came to enterprise, we had to deal with other people. And being a proof of concept helped us convince other people that Posit Team was a worthwhile purchase. So lesson 2 was don't do this on your own. I tried doing this on my own at first, and I got absolutely nowhere. The whole system is a lot more complex, multiple hosts, authentication decisions, various configurations. There were legal concerns that I didn't even anticipate. I mean, how many of us have actually read through a EULA? I think I've read through one many years ago, and all I do now is click accept. But I couldn't do that with the corporate. Not only did I have to read it, our legal team had to read it, and they didn't like it. So after searching around and finding, going through IT, knocking on doors and saying, IT, help me, how am I going to get this done? And a lot of people gave me some pretty good lip service for about 6-7 months until I finally found a project manager. The project manager knew exactly what had to be done. So the project manager got us in touch with cybersecurity, legal, IT, budget, and all these people. And then also with Jumping Rivers, which is a company in Newcastle, England, and they helped us install and configure things like that. But none of this would have happened. I would have never gotten this far if I hadn't found that one person in the company. I don't know what kind of advice I can give you if you need to find that one person. You just got to knock on doors, talk to IT, and find out who a project manager is. Once we got all these components together, then it sort of introduced another problem. And that brings me to lesson 3, sort of developing a comprehensive requirements document. The other problem was I became the expert. They were all asking me questions, which I kind of expected, but they're asking me questions and they wanted answers right away. And if I didn't give them the answers right away, then they would put me off for another week, 2 weeks, a month, until we could get back to them. And so the answer to that was, and we knew what we wanted. We just didn't have all the detailed answers right there. And being scientists, being geneticists, we didn't know that in normal software development or procurement, you have a requirements document. And so we made this requirements document that put in all this, and this was really for us more than anyone else's use. Because I found out they weren't reading this. I distributed it and nobody else read it. But it was for us because they were going to ask us questions. And the biggest thing that we've found out to focus on in the requirements document was not so much the what, although that was important, and the who was kind of important, but not so much. The how and the when we had no control over, so we didn't put that. But the why, that was the big thing, was why do we need to spend X dollars on this product? And they kept coming back and they kept saying, well, what about Power BI? We spent hundreds and thousands on Power BI. Can't you use that? And we had to demonstrate, no, we can't use it because X, Y, and Z. We can't, you can't run models in the back end. You can access data in the back end with Power BI, but you can't run linear models or anything like that. So lesson 4 was we had to ease the learning curve internally for my group. My group was familiar with R Studio, Shiny, but they weren't entirely on board with the whole process of doing things themselves. My boss came to me when we started this. My boss came to me and said, Lowell, I want a button. Like that Staples commercial, the easy button. He said, I want a button. Click that button and have my reports published. And basically what he was saying was he wanted everybody to have the ability to publish their own rather than just giving stuff to me and putting it on the server. And that was sort of a mind shift. It sounds simple, but it was a mind shift for the group. And so we started with the documentation from Posit, which was really good. The documentation is quite good, but we had to go beyond that because we had to get their computers configured, right? we had specific URLs to give them. We had specific usernames and things we had to give them. So we created a 2-page document, just a cheat sheet in Microsoft Word, and passed it around. And it did help quite a bit. The other thing we do is every month we have regularly scheduled meetings. And in these meetings, it's just a time to share ideas, to answer questions, demonstrate new packages that are come up on CRAN or wherever, show packages we've developed in-house and that kind of thing. So those are the four lessons that we learned that I hope can help. Start with open source. Don't do it by yourself. Develop a comprehensive requirements document and do something to ease the learning curve within your group. And one thing that I might add is that I had a lot of support from my general manager, from my boss. And that support is invaluable. If you can get that support, if you can find who either holds the purse strings or has influence, get their support.